Let's talk about fire. Hello everyone, my name is Francesca. I'm an Italian living in London, and here we talk about personal finance, financial independence, business, career, and everything else related to that. So the other day I made a video about financial independence. You can watch it here, and my plan to reach it. In that video I referred to coast fire and the different types of fire. So I thought that maybe doing a deep dive on the different types of fire, so financial independence, retirement early, could be beneficial. It could maybe inspire you and consider the different types of fire, what that means for you. So, let's just do it, right? So, first of all, financial independence just means doing something that everyone is planning on doing anyways at some point, which is, eventually, which is retiring, but just speeding up the process, getting that before the others. Now, you will have to invest more than the average person. You would have to be more diligent and think about your money more than the average Joe would do. But the whole idea of fire is that you give more today so that you can reap the rewards later. So there are different types of fires, right? So fire in and of itself, what that means is not having to work anymore, not being reliant on your 9 to 5 for your basic minimum expenses, living expenses. There are, of course, different styles, different types of fire, and I've identified 4. I know that there are different variations as well, but for this video, we're just going to talk about the main 4 ones that I can think of. The usual line of thinking for when thinking about fire, and if you look for articles that you'll find on the internet, is that as long as you have 25 to 30 times your annual living expenses saved and invested in the stock market, then you're good to go. That allows you to withdraw safely 4% of your money from the capital gains of that money that is working for you actively, without impacting your baseline and without impacting the underlying kind of like capital that you have invested and that you have directly contributed. Now, this is like where we start when we talk about fire, when we think about fire. But again, there are some variations. So the first one is the so-called lean fire. Now, what that means is it's maybe the most risky out of all the different types of fire, because what that means is basically that you have less of a safety net. You have a small amount of money basically invested, right? It means that you are willing to compromise. It means that you're willing to cut down on your expenses and you're ready to live frugally. You are maybe one of those people that are not scared of doing it themselves, so DIY sort of people. You are very hands-on. I don't know, if the fridge breaks, you are going to be the one that goes there and tries to fix it themselves before calling the electrician, right? That might also mean that you are good to live on a relatively low income, and it's very much dependent on you and also on where you live. But let's just assume, let's say if you're in the UK, £20,000 or less, right? So that would be kind of like what you are working with on a lean fire budget. It also means that you might even explore the idea of doing like geo arbitrage. So what I mean by that is considering moving to a country where the overall, kind of relocating to a country where the overall living expenses are cheaper than the UK or the US, or kind of broadly speaking, the Western world. So that could also help you kind of like having to amass small amount of money, a smaller pot of money. So this is lean fire. Again, ideally you wouldn't have any debt, because that would endanger you, right? Because if you have debt, that ties you down. And of course, like on a frugal minimal budget such as a lean fire, then you really don't want to have that. And if it's even a topic for you, kids are not really an option on such a budget. I mean, you could try, but it's not recommended. I think you don't have as much wiggle room for also like raising up kids. Now, the second type is the so-called barista fire. And this is something that I actually really like. I really like this concept. What that means is that your investments and the money that you have working for you cover part of your living expenses, but not the full amount. So you can afford to completely not be working, but you're still also not completely reliant on one source of income, and you can afford to work part-time, hence the name barista, because it means that you can afford to just work sometimes a few days a week or so at a bar, at a coffee shop, and then the rest is covered by your investments. So what that can mean is, like you live on a, let's say, 25 to 40,000 pounds per year sort of budget. So it's definitely a decent amount, and it allows you a lot of freedom. What that also means is that you don't have to compromise as much. So you have the freedom to choose whether you want to live in a lower cost of living area, or like city even, or state, or you could also kind of like compromise in other ways. So maybe live in London, let's say, but then of course your living arrangements will have to be, you would have to be more mindful of those, right? So maybe you have to share your household and what have you. So I think what's great about this type of fire is the flexibility and freedom that it allows you to have, and also it's attainable way earlier than other types of fire that we will be discussing in the rest of the video, because of course you won't need as much time to achieve that half fire number as you would for if you decided to really go for it and just be dependent like 100% on your investments. Now, the third type of fire is the normal fire, the traditional fire. Now, what that means is, when you accumulate enough income generating assets that bring in money to cover all your living expenses, and you don't have to compromise, right? So you are ready to retire before the expected kind of like 65 years or so. And what you typically have to do is, of course, cut down on expenses to make sure that you can bear the 4% withdrawal rate that is usually recommended. What that also means is that you don't want to maybe go live somewhere else just because it's cheaper, right? So you want to have the freedom to choose where to live and do that comfortably. That means that frugality is not something that you have to make an option for you. Of course, you are still mindful of your money, because you would typically have a budget of 40 to 50,000 pounds, and if you wanted to have a kid, that's definitely possible on normal fire, but then of course not over the top. So basically what this style of fire means is you live a normal life with the added benefit of not having to work for it, right? So you have accumulated enough money to be unreliant on a job, and you're thriving. It's a great lifestyle. I think that whenever someone thinks of fire, financial independence, that's what they picture in their mind. And finally, we have fat fire. Now, this is fire, but on steroids. It means that you're not skimming down on expenses. It means that you're actually kind of factoring in a lot of extras. So that could be, I don't know, fancy private school for your kids if you want to have them, or, lush holidays, gifts, what have you, living in an expensive area in your city or an expensive city altogether. So, of course, this is the fire that is most secure, because if you have enough of a nest egg there to cover your fat fire, then it means that you can weather any sort of curveballs that life might throw at you. But of course, that also means that this type of fire takes the longest to achieve, right? Because you will need way more time to set aside that type of money. And of course, this is also typically more aligned with the type of lifestyle that you might want to have later down in life. So where I think that kind of lean fire, barista fire especially, they're more suited to people in their kind of late 20s, mid 30s or so. This type of fire, so the fat fire, is definitely more family friendly. It's something that when you're done with frugality, you're done with having to compromise on living accommodation, you just want to have a nice good life, right? And not think about expenses. So that's more towards people that are actually closer to retirement, hence why they would have also had more time to amass that sort of money. Now, fire is more about getting you to think about what retirement means to you, and knowing that it doesn't have to be the traditional way if you don't want that to be, you know, your life, right? So it means that I find that an extremely empowering concept, financial independence, right? And again, when I first heard about it, it really opened up my mind and my eyes to a lot of possibilities and how my life could be different. Again, I encourage you to, you know, think about these different lifestyles, think about what you could implement and which one you would be best suited to reach. And of course, you're more than welcome to, you know, you can mix and match. You can have a, I don't know, a Barista FIRE that is more lush, right? So with a bigger budget, so you can decide to absolutely work part-time also on a fat FIRE budget if that's something that you want. And it's definitely something that I would consider for myself. So yeah, I hope this was interesting, and then I'll see you in the next time with another video. Bye.